Hello, good morning. Thank you for joining us today. So we're going to be discussing the term postural variability. The title of this presentation is Moving Away from the Perfect Posture to One That Moves Regularly. So just to introduce myself, my name's Tom. I'm a physiotherapist, but also a lecturer in sport and exercise therapy at Solent University. I've got with me TJ, who will introduce herself as well.
Hiya, I'm TJ. I'm a third year student studying sport and exercise therapy.
So the content of this session is going to be to explore the history of the term posture. So what is posture and what do we mean by posture? We're also then going to try and bust some myths regarding posture. So there's lots of things that we can hear in the media and through hearsay about posture. We want to try and bust some of the myths and get to the truths. We're also going to discuss the consequences of sedentary postures, but also define what we mean by sedentary postures. And the aim of this session will ultimately to be providing you with some tools to combat sedentary postures and also discuss different ways to get moving within the workplace, whether that be at work or at home, as we all are at the moment. So feel free to ask some questions as we go. The method to do that is in the box in the corner of your screen. You can just type a question, and Hannah's going to be collating those questions that we can kind of go through and answer at the end of the session. We have already had 4 questions, 3 of which we should answer as we go, but we can clarify any of the points we might have missed, and 1 of which I'll come to at the end during the questions and answers session. And also just to explain that because this is about postural variability, which we'll come on to what that means later, it would be a bit hypocritical to just have me and TJ sat here for the next half an hour or so. So we will be integrating some different periods of exercise, very gentle stuff, just different movements as we go through these slides. Now the first thing, just to get things rolling, some of you may be aware of the software Mentimeter. If you haven't yet used it before, all you need is a smartphone or any phone that's internet accessed, or a tablet, or your laptops. And if you could just quickly go to www.menti.com. Now the access code when I wrote this presentation was 617649, however that has changed. So when you've gone to menti.com, the access code you need is 882202. So I'll just try and put that in the questions section. 882202. Okay, so www.menti.com and the code is 882202. You'll then be asked 2 questions. The first is how would you define the word posture? So with this question, don't worry about any positive or negative connotations around posture, just think about how you would define posture. And the second question is how do you understand, or what do you understand about good posture? Now, if you're struggling with the Menti app and you'd like to share your thoughts, then please do so via the question and answers section there as well. But on my phone, I'll start to get some of your responses coming through. So just to confirm, it's www.menti.com and the code is 882202. So I can see it's working. I've already had a couple of responses come through. Okay, so I've got some responses there for that first question. I'm going to just move on to that second question, but if I could just ask you to do this in a different posture now. So if you could stand or lie down, or sit if you're already standing. If you just change your position, so I'm going to have a lie down while you answer this next question. And so the next question there on there was, what do you understand about good posture? Okay, so change your position and have a go at just answering that second question now. It's the same code, the 882202. It should let you answer the next question now. Okay, so feel free to keep going with that if you're still answering your responses. I'm just going to share with you a couple that we've had so far. So how would you define the word posture? Some of the common things that have come up is the position that we hold ourselves in sitting, words like stance or how you stand, and how we hold ourselves. But the key one that's come up the most is position. So if we look at the actual textbook definition of posture, pretty much got that there. So the position in which someone holds their body when standing or sitting. So it's down to position, and it doesn't necessarily mean just sitting or standing, it's the position in which we hold ourselves. So if we look at the second question there, in terms of how we define good posture, some of the responses I've had through is no slouching, standing like a ballerina would stand, and standing tall through the spine. So what we're going to have a look at as we go through this presentation is what is good posture, and where does the term good posture come from? And this is where we can maybe start to unpick a few of the myths that commonly come out around posture. Just at this stage now, I'm just going to get TJ just to perform our first couple of exercises. So if you can join in with TJ, and just to let you know, these exercises will be provided as a video afterwards as well, so you can watch them back later. These are things we would recommend or encourage you to do that require very little equipment that can be performed at home or in the workplace. Over to you, TJ.
Okay, so our first one is an upper trap stretch. So what you're going to do is take your left ear down to your left shoulder, have it nice and relaxed, and you're going to use your left arm and pull yourself over nice and gently and try and relax that right shoulder as much as you can. Just feel it down the side of your neck just here. Just be nice and gentle, make sure you're not pulling your neck off too much, just a nice little pressure. Okay, so you'd hold these for about 15 up to 30 seconds max, okay? Nothing too much, just release that pressure there. Then from there, so you're already in that side position, and you look down slightly diagonally. Now get your levator scapularis, just feel it in a slightly different position in your neck, so it should be a bit more towards the back of your neck. Apply that same pressure, and be the same for doing it the other side as well. But I won't do the other side because that's pretty self-explanatory. So back to you, Tom.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of stretches there just to get started with. So in terms of answering what we mean by good posture, it's quite helpful to look back at the history of the term. So if we go all the way back to the 1600s, posture actually came from the military, and this was the idea of a military drill formation that was optimal to carry weapons. As we then move into the early 1800s, the idea of sitting upright was actually associated with the moral upper class society. Therefore it was considered dignified, trustworthy and attractive to sit in an upright position. And the opposite would be that slouching was associated more with the morally loose and lower class society, therefore considered to be undignified, untrustworthy and unattractive. So far we can see that the word posture has actually come from the idea of appearance and aesthetics. In the late 1800s, the first profession around posture was invented, called the posture master. And this was one who would teach the practices of artificial contortions of the body. So actually at this stage we're thinking artificial, so we're trying to put the body in positions that it doesn't naturally or always want to naturally be in. We've all heard of the corset, so the corset was actually introduced as a way of maintaining this kind of idea of an upright position, again for beauty and health in the Victorian era. And it wasn't until the early 1900s that we started to use anatomical terms and phrases to describe and define different postures, things like sway back or lumbar lordosis or forward head positions. We've probably all seen images like this, so schools became the primary site of regular postural correction. So far we've looked at how it was derived from the military, and then it was kind of accepted in terms of a status, in terms of socio-economic status, and then we've kind of integrated it into schools to try and teach people how to sit and stand. And from this, the internet, as obviously as many things, has spread the word about posture, but maybe for the bad side, really. So spreading potential myths around posture. And what we've done to try and rectify that is invent all of these different gadgets to try and support what we think is a good position or a good posture. And what this presentation today is going to do is start to show how maybe that hasn't been overly helpful over the years. And more recently, in the kind of 2000s, there's been lots of studies in terms of looking at posture that have started to unpick the myth of a perfect posture. This one in particular, Richards, in 2016, looked at 1,108 17-year-olds in a longitudinal study over 5 years, and they categorised those people into 4 different positions that they naturally adopted to sit in. Some people sat upright, some people sat slumped, some people sat upright but with a forward head position, and others were somewhere kind of in between. And the hypothesis of the study was that those who sit upright would report the lowest amount of back and neck pain. But that isn't what they found. What they actually found is there was no difference between the 4 groups. And their conclusions were that the position in which we sit doesn't relate to back and neck pain. It's actually the duration in which we sit, so how long we're in one position for. And that leads us to the present day, where we're going to start to look at this in a little bit later. So this is to be continued. So we can see from the history, the term good posture doesn't actually have foundations in anatomy and healthcare and well-being at all, but it does so in aesthetics and status. And so we can then ask ourselves, so what? So what does this mean in terms of what we should be doing now? Before we progress on to answering that cliffhanger question, I'm just going to pass back to TJ, who's got a couple of other stretches for us to perform.
Okay, so the first one we're going to perform is for your posterior capsule, which is in your shoulder, so at the back of your shoulder. So you're going to get one of your arms, you're going to bring it across your body, you're going to try and push that shoulder out as much as you can, and then pull on your arm, so give it a nice big pull. You can feel it in the back of that shoulder. Okay, so you hold these stretches for the same as the previous, so 20 to 30 seconds, and just relax that one. So the next one is called a chin tuck, so I'm just going to face sideways for this one. So what you're going to do is nice and attractive, you're going to give yourself as many chins as you possibly can. So you're going to tuck your chin in as much as you can and relax. So with these, you do more repetitions in time, so you do up to 10 reps for these. That's your chin tucks. And another one that you can do is called a shoulder reset. So you lift your shoulders up, back and down. So it just sets your posture, opens up that chest a little bit, and just sets you back in that good position before you carry on working. Because as you type throughout the day, as you're working, you'll slowly become more rounded. You want to try and just set yourself nice and back, use your back muscles and just set yourself nice and clean. Back to you, Tom.
Okay, so following on from that question, so the idea that posture is actually set more in aesthetics and class status, and rather than anatomy and well-being, has actually led to the idea that this perfect posture exists. And this has meant that society has almost been kind of tricked into thinking that we must sit or must stand in a certain way, and we must maintain that position for long periods. So again, why is this necessarily a problem? Well, there's 3 different aspects to this problem. The first is that essentially it's given us as an excuse to sit for long periods of time, so long as we feel we're doing so correctly. So if we feel we're sat in a perfect position all day, the problem is actually that we're sat all day, not the position we're in. So it's almost given us this excuse to sit for longer periods. It's also potentially made us a bit more paranoid about how we sit and how we're supposed to sit, which has potentially led to more bracing and tensing of certain muscle groups. And what we know is when we brace and tense muscles, they become fatigued. And fatigue and muscle activity can produce things like lactic acid, which can ultimately cause discomfort and pain. So sometimes being able to, or feeling that we need to be bracing or tensing in one position can be detrimental. And thirdly, it's potentially distracted us from what we should really be doing to help our physical and mental well-being, which is actually moving. So the idea that we're sitting in one position isn't correct. It's the idea we should be moving more regularly. So it would therefore seem that the focus of our interventions to improve physical and mental well-being in the workplace, or at home as we are at the moment, should actually be on reducing the accumulative time in which we sit for, rather than changing the way in which we sit. And this reminded me of an old riddle, the old riddle of what's heavier, a ton of feathers or a ton of bricks? So the answer is obviously they're both the same, they both weigh a ton. Now if we replace this with what's worse for you, slouching or sitting upright, the answer is they're both as bad for you as long as if you're sitting in one position for the whole day. So it's the regular change in position that's important rather than necessarily how we sit. The term sedentary is derived from the Latin term sedentarius, and this means time spent sitting. So time spent sitting would relate to whether we're sitting for long periods of the time being active or inactive, and it's also characterised by much sitting and little physical activity. Therefore, a sedentary worker is an individual whose work requires them to sit for much of the day, whilst typically requiring very low energy expenditure. Just to recap there, sedentary comes from the term time spent sitting, and so a sedentary worker is someone who spends the majority of their day in one position. Okay, so good opportunity then for us to stand now. So TJ's got a couple of other exercises for us to work through now.
Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to stand up for me, move off of our beds or sofas, wherever we are. And what we're going to do is just a whole body rotation. So you're going to swing your arms from side to side and come up onto your toes. Just let yourself relax. Just move from side to side. Just get the whole body moving. Get that blood flowing back through your body. Perfect. And then once we've done that, we're going to find a doorway. And we're just going to do a chest stretch. So I'm just going to open up the door. What you need to do is get your forearm. You're going to pop it onto that door frame. You're going to step through and you can feel a nice big stretch across your chest. Just opens up that chest. Whilst we're sitting around, it can come quite tight in the front of our bodies. Just need to stretch it out, open it up. So you'd hold that at the same time as previous, 20 to 30 seconds.
Okay, so following on from this idea of a sedentary worker, just got another Mentimeter for you to perform now. So again, the code's going to be slightly different to what is advertised on the screen there. So this time I've got 3 questions for you. First thing is to have a think about your daily routine, and this can be either at the moment or when you are in a workplace. And think about how much of the day you spend sedentary. The second question is, what do you do that involves lengthy periods of sitting every day? So it might be the commute to work, it might be what you do after work or what you do during work. And then finally, would you say that this time has increased or decreased since the COVID-19 pandemic? Okay, so the access code that we need this time is still www.menti.com, and the code is 617715. So again, I'll put that in the comments box, 617715. Again, if you don't want to do that through Menti, or you want to just have a think about it yourself, or you want to share your responses through the Q&A function, then feel free to do so. And this time I'm just going to ask if you could do this in a different position to what we've been in so far. So if you've been sat for this presentation, then stand. If you've been stood, then sit. And if you've been sat unstanding, then have a lie down. Okay, so just change your position while you just answer this question. I'm going to stand. Okay, so I've got some responses coming through again. I'm just going to switch on to the next slide. And again, I've got some answers coming through for that second question. So what do you do that involves long periods of sitting? Okay, and the final one, once everyone's in the room, so I think I've got a few people in there, I'm going to start the quiz now, so it's just going to ask you that question. Would you say that this time has increased or decreased since the pandemic? I don't know if the function of that's working correctly, so see if any responses come through. Okay, cool. Lovely. So just to go through the responses there, I'll go through in reverse order. So would you say that this time has increased or decreased since the pandemic? So 5 people used the Mentimeter, 3 said yes and 2 said no. I would say in my experience, my time spent sitting has probably gone up, but my opportunity to move more regularly has probably gone up as well. The second one is, what do you do that involves lengthy periods of sitting every day? So on this one, we've got things like desk work, using the laptop, watching TV, reading, looking at notes, marking, traveling to and from work. So a whole host of different activities which accumulatively can add up to long periods of sitting. And the statement around roughly how long you would spend sitting on a day-to-day basis has come up at about 7.5 hours on average from the 6 people who responded. So if we move on then to our next topic focus, which is looking at the consequences of sedentary sitting. Now, there's some quite powerful statistics in here. Almost some of them look kind of exaggerated, but these are all from credible resources. So the idea that sitting is the new smoking has been bandied about a little bit. So a very powerful statement, as I say. We all know how bad for our health smoking is, and so sitting is thought to be almost on a par with this. So sitting for as little as 2 continuous hours increases the risk of heart disease, diabetes, back and neck pain, and other orthopedic conditions. And it's been calculated that each hour of sitting watching TV after we get past the age of 25 reduces our life expectancy by approximately 22 minutes, which seems very extreme. And some effects of sedentary sitting, unfortunately, are irreversible by diet and exercise, which means that if we sit for those 7.5 hours in the daytime, but in the evening go for a run, unfortunately the 7.5 hours can't necessarily be unpicked. So it has to be that we need to be moving more regularly throughout the day. And a stat here from the World Health Organization in 2017 suggested that sitting too much is actually the 4th biggest preventable killer globally. And on average, we're pretty good, it seems, in this forum, that on average people tend to sit for 13 hours a day. I think that was a US study, so we're probably a bit better than that maybe in the UK. So what effects can sedentary sitting potentially have? So it can have a few effects. The first thing is it can increase chronic disease and higher mortality rates, as we've just seen. It can also potentially lead to weight gain, but also reduce mental well-being. Reduce cardiovascular fitness, the ability of our circulatory system to get oxygen to our muscles, and reduce blood flow. So things like when we go on a long haul flight, we're encouraged to stand regularly to increase blood flow. But more specific to what we're going to discuss now is the link between sitting and sedentary sitting, so one position, or sedentary positions, with other muscle and joint pain, and specifically back and neck pain. So quick question, this is a slightly rhetorical one, you can just shout at the screen, I won't be able to hear it, but how many of you have experienced back, neck or shoulder pain at some point in your lives? Now I predict it's fairly high based on the statistics. So the prevalence of back pain or lower back pain, so back pain in the lumbar region, is estimated to be as high as 85% in the general public. Now 97% of these cases are what we call mechanical, so they're down to non-serious or life-threatening pathology. An example of non-mechanical problems would be things like tumours, cancers, things like inflammatory joint problems like ankylosing spondylitis and things like that. So 97% of the time it's down to muscles and joints. Now 70% of those 97% are what we call non-specific or idiopathic, which means there's no known reason, it just gradually crept up. And 85% of these cases will resolve in the acute phase, so within 3 months of the onset of symptoms, 85% of the time it will resolve. However, things like muscle fatigue, deconditioning, and prolonged stretching of our soft tissues, including our muscles, ligaments and tendons, and undue tension can cause this vicious cycle to continue. It's often the cause of the non-specific or unexplained onset of symptoms, but it's also the cause that can cause something to become more chronic or persistent. And all of these are associated with these sedentary postures. So again, a good opportunity for us to do another couple of exercises. So these ones require a little bit of floor space. If you don't have that, don't worry, you can just watch TJ in her small amount of space that she's going to perform them in. But you can kind of come back to these exercises later, as I say, they are being filmed. Okay, so over to you, TJ.
Okay, so our first one's called a modified child's pose. So if you're sat at a desk or a table and chair, you can do it quite easily. If not, you can do it sat on the floor and reach up onto a bed or sofa. Either works well. So what you're going to do is you're going to sit a little bit of distance away from the table. And you're going to get your arms, you're going to reach them forward as much as you can. And you're going to try and reach up to, like, walk your fingertips on the sofa, on the bed, on the table. So you feel a nice stretch down your back. So you'd hold this for the same time as previous, so 20 to 30 seconds. And relax there. And then the other one is where you need a bit of floor space, so I'm just going to spin the camera around. So what you do is lie down on the floor. These are called lumbar rolls. You lie down on the floor and you're just going to rock your knees from side to side. Try to keep your shoulders flat on the floor the whole time. You should feel a nice little stretch in your bottom of your spine and your lumbar region. Just rocking nice and gently. Not being vigorous or anything, just nice smooth movements the whole time. And probably do that for reps. So aim to do 20 overall, so roll in 10 times each side. I'll pass you back to Tom.
See where it would have been nice to have some webcams and see you all getting off the floor at this stage. See how do that. So moving on to neck pain. So obviously we've talked there about lower back pain. Neck pain, the prevalence in the general population is approximately 20%. This is because the human head weighs approximately 5 kilograms. So if our body is having to hold our head in different positions for long periods of time, fatigue and muscle deconditioning can occur. Again, all of which are associated with these periods of long sitting. So not necessarily how we sit, but more the duration in which we're sat for. However, these are quite negative messages I've been spreading so far. So just to contradict this, despite these statistics, the spine is actually a very strong and robust structure. However, as with any other area of the body, such as the knee or the shoulder or the ankle, immobility will lead to stiffness, and stiffness can lead to deconditioning and muscle weakness. Therefore, it is very important that we look at trying to maintain a strong and healthy body in general. And later on in this presentation, TJ is just going to show us 5 go-to exercises that can be performed as strengthening exercises, as opposed to the stretches that we've looked at today so far. So just to summarise where we're at so far, back pain and neck pain are both very common, but rarely sinister. There is no such thing as the perfect posture. Posture in the connotations around posture have been brought about by aesthetics and class rather than anatomy. It's actually the accumulative time spent sitting that is the problem. So what can we do to rectify this? Well, we've already been doing some bits and pieces to rectify this as we've been progressing through the presentation here. But the key phrase, which is the title of this presentation, is postural variability, which is the act of varying one's posture regularly throughout the waking day. So what we're looking at here is breaking up sedentary periods of sitting with a regular change in position. And those changes of position could still be in sitting. It could be that we sit upright for a bit, and then we slouch for a bit, and then we sit upright for a bit again, and then we stand for a bit, and then we lie for a bit. And as I said earlier, the beauty of working from home is that we can potentially lie and work, as well as being in different positions. We should be seeking interventions that promote regular postural variability. So there are different gadgets and different bits of equipment like lumbar rolls or kneeling desks or sit-stand desks, kneeling chairs, gym balls, all sorts of bits of equipment. But these bits of equipment are only useful if we use them to promote postural variability. So again, we move regularly rather than just sitting all day in a different gadget. The ultimate aim there is to accrue less time sitting rather than necessarily focusing on how we sit. Cheesy term here, motion is lotion. So movement is going to lubricate our joints, it's going to get the blood flow into our muscles, and TJ will look at a few of the other benefits of exercise a little bit later on. Looking at the evidence around postural variability and ergonomics in general, this systematic review here from 2010 looked at the impact that ergonomic interventions have on back and neck pain. So the classic things like a chair or raising the computer screen or providing footrests, those kind of things. And what they actually found within the 10 randomized controlled trials that they used in their systematic review is that there's only low to moderate quality evidence that these ergonomic interventions are any better than no intervention at all for back and neck pain, both in the short term and the long term. In 2014, this study looking in postural variability found the opposite. They found that things like sit-stand desks that allow you to sit and then stand to vary your posture, and also using reminder software, which TJ will discuss in a second as well, to encourage us to change position regularly, was significantly effective in reducing neck and back pain. And finally, this systematic review here from 2016, these guys looked at interventions that encourage active movement throughout the day at work, as opposed to providing things that just encourage us to sit more. So things like alternating workstations, like sit-stand desks, and encouraging people to use the stairs more than the lift, all of those kind of standard interventions. And they did find that they had a significant effect in reducing back and neck pain. So the message from all of this is that just having a chair that enables us to sit in what we think is a good position doesn't work. The regular movement throughout the day is all that will. Okay, so we've got a final stretch now from TJ before I hand over to her to discuss a couple of other benefits.
Okay, so our last one is just a side bend stretch. You can do this sat down or you can do it standing. You're just going to get one arm and reach over as far as you can, and you should feel a stretch down the side of your body. Again, hold that for 20 to 30 seconds. You can do it on both sides. So if we relax there, we'll do the other side. We'll even up a little bit. And that's it. Just reaching over nice and far. Good job. And relax there.
Okay, so how can we promote postural variability? So here's just a few ideas. Things like standing while using the phone or while on virtual meetings can provide a good opportunity to change our posture. So if we've been sat for a period of time, then maybe stand while we're on the phone or when we're on our working meetings. Sit-stand desks are very expensive. Essentially what they do is they allow you to sit and then stand, and so does a pile of books or a box. So trying to set up a workplace that enables us to sit and then put our laptop on the pile of books and stand, so we can change our position regularly. Changing our position regularly through the day doesn't necessarily have to be a huge change. As I said before, it can involve slouching for a bit and then sitting up tall for a bit and then slouching a bit again. It's key that we're moving and changing the position as opposed to holding one posture. TJ's just going to discuss some technology here.
Sorry, so you can use technology to help you move. So I'm sure most of us have got smartphones in which we can set reminders. So we recommend that you stand for 2 minutes for every 30 minutes. So if you're sat for 30 minutes, stand up for every 2. So you could set a reminder in your phone for standing up every 30 minutes for 2 minutes. And also we recommend for every hour to perform an exercise. So you could perform one of the 10 stretches that we've just shown you. So you could do that either on the way to the toilet, to go to make yourself a cup of tea or coffee, whatever way works. You can just integrate them into your routine, but having a reminder can help nudge you to remember yourself. Also, if you've got a smartwatch, on Garmin watches you have like a move bar, so obviously the more you move, the less that bar fills up. So if the watch vibrates or buzzes at you to move, just actually take note of it, don't just ignore it, go and actually start moving around. Can just help you guys out a little bit.
Okay, so we can use equipment like lumbar rolls. So if you're not sure what I mean by that, it's a small cushion that sits in the lower back on the back of the chair. Again, if we just use that all day though, it's just going to keep us in one position. So use it intermittently, put it in for a bit and then take it out for a bit and put it back in a bit. Or things like footrests or kneeling desks or gym balls as well. And finally, the focus of what we've discussed so far is to move and perform gentle exercises. So again, just over to TJ to chat through the benefits of that.
So the more that you exercise and the more that you're actually moving around has lots of different benefits. So you can see that from the little diagram we've got up at the moment. You can see that it'll improve your your synovial fluid circulation. So that'll basically just helping your joints move, helping them keep lubricated. So that can help decrease the joint pain and stiffness. So you'll get an increase in blood flow. The more that you move, the better. So the blood flow can keep moving, and it'll help prevent blood pooling. So if you're sat for like a long period of time, like they say on an aeroplane, obviously you can get deep vein thrombosis from sitting on an aeroplane for long periods of time. Just because you're not in an aeroplane, sitting down still doesn't help. So the more that you move, the better. It'll help with your nervous system, so axoplasmic flow, help with the nerves flowing throughout the body, get them nice and lubricated moving throughout. You'll probably feel better for it as well. The more you move, the better you're going to feel. You're going to have a bit more energy, not feel as lethargic. You're going to get that feel-good factor from those release of endorphins. And a little plus is that you might even lose some weight, so a bit of a win-win. There's also some key points to say. So exercise doesn't have to be difficult. We've shown you 10 stretches. They're not hard. You don't need equipment for them. Nice and simple. And moving regularly does count as exercise. You don't have to be sweating to be counted as exercise. You can just move a little bit, go for a little walk. It all helps. Obviously, you want to try and move in a natural and relaxed way. You don't want to be bracing, and you don't want to be holding your breath. So that's also links into that fourth point that's just popped up. So you want to just nice and gentle, nice and smooth. Just take your time with it all and stay nice and relaxed.
So TJ has 5 exercises that she's also recommended in terms of some strength training, which we'll share with you via video link after this session as well. So just to summarise today, we've already recapped on the fact that back pain is very common and rarely sinister, and that there is no perfect posture, but it's more movement that counts. To add to that summary, seek methods to try and reduce time spent sitting. Remember that the spine is strong and robust, but we have to strengthen it, use it or lose it, and the idea that motion is lotion. And exercises needn't be challenging, it's more the accumulative time moving that we're aiming for throughout the day.